Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We are your hosts, Jordan and Kumar, that's me.
Hello.
This week we are talking about Our Little Sister from 2015, based on the manga Umimachi Diary.
Right. Umimachi means?
It means like seaside town.
Right.
Although, did they actually name the town in the comic? Anyway.
It's in Kamakura, isn't it? Is that where they live?
Yes. So, Kamakura is a city. Anyway.
There's a big Buddha there. That's about all I know about Kamakura.
Yes, there is a big Buddha there. Yeah.
And Rudyard Kipling wrote a poem called the Buddha at Kamakura.
Oh, right. Okay, I did not know that.
That's going to be about it for trivia this week.
Yes, okay. Well, you know, it's actually Golden Week. So this is in Japan, there's like 3 days at the beginning of May in a row that are holidays. So people I think they take the extra 2 days off, or I'm not sure how, but it's like a major, like there's 3 weeks in the year that are like the major holiday weeks in Japan. There's another one in August, which is Obon, which is like for respecting the spirits of the dead. And then there's like New Year's. And this one in May is, and also, you know, speaking of this podcast, I saw, or what we read for this podcast, I saw this thing on Twitter of the line from Enoshima Island to get onto the bullet train back to Tokyo. And it was at 180% capacity, apparently. And it was just a throng. It's like one of those, usually you see these kinds of crowds on the news when there's been like a fireworks festival and 400 people died in a crush. It was like that. It was like a huge mass of people. And that's kind of nearby. I think they're even talking about going to Enoshima in the movie, because it's just right a hop across the water from Kamakura. Anyway, pause the podcast. Do we need to have I don't think we...
Well, nothing happens in this film, so...
No, so, yeah...
There's absolutely no reason why you should pause the podcast.
No, you don't need to. You can listen to this and then watch the movie later if you so choose. Okay, so this manga is by Akimi Yoshida. It ran from 2006 to 2018 in 9 volumes. And so the movie came out in 2015.
So while it was still running. Not uncommon in Japan?
That's right, yeah. Akira was the same way, and I'm sure many others. I think Dragon Ball kind of got caught up in that. Sure. They had to drag out the fights for like weeks and weeks because they were waiting for the manga to catch up with something like that. Yeah, so it's not that unusual. There's also a spin-off series. Now, as we said last week, this is not actually available officially in English. There's a fan translation.
The manga, you mean, yeah.
The manga, which you can find online. And it's like, there's a lot of, what's that word, weeaboo? There's a lot of weeaboo stuff in this translation that will be annoying. It was annoying for me.
Of course, because you're the expert. I didn't mind learning that a cricket is called a fireplace horse.
Oh, that's fine there. That kind of stuff is fine. But when you like they refer to the grandparents as Oji-san and Oba-san, and I'm like, why not just translate as grandfather and grandmother?
Right, so that's weeaboo stuff.
So it's like, what? Oh, because we're insiders and we know these awesome words because we're like Japanese. It's such a dumbass approach to translate. Like there's no nuance in Oba-chan or Oji-chan. It's just grandmother, translate that.
I gotcha.
So you can hand it to somebody who's never read a manga before. And they put in all the honorifics like the sans and the chans.
Yes, they did. I did notice that actually.
Once or twice is fine, but you know, if you do it all the time, you're just blocking out.
This is the salty insider take that I absolutely...
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get this angry about all this, but it's just irritating but I mean, they're translating. They're hobbyists. They're going to translate fine. This is the best you'll get. Anyway.
So this is code for fellow fans. It's like, look, you fellow fan.
Yeah.
You fellow weeaboo.
Or like when they're about to start eating and they say itadakimasu.
Yeah.
And they just they don't translate that because they're so subtle. We can't say let's dig in or something like that before they start eating. Come on.
I just read. I love that drives you nuts. I just looked completely past it.
Yeah, well, good. I actually, you know what? I do think this is a good manga. If you're really keen to read it, there's like 2 volumes plus a chapter worth that's online in English. If you Google it, Umimachi Diary, you will find it.
Right.
And you can read it.
Is that an official translation?
No, this is what I'm talking about, is this thing.
So this is what I read. Is it?
Yes, you read the fan... there's only the fan translation. There's no official translation.
Gotcha.
But even though that's the case, I really wanted to cover the movie because the movie's from an important director. So I'm like, well, let's fudge it a bit this week and go with the fan translation. Because it's the best we can...
Oh, it's totally... Yeah, of course.
And there's 1 or 2 others that I'm like... This is a movie I want to talk about, but the manga, we don't have an official English release.
It's fine that we're doing the fanlation because we're getting the much needed context from you about what these guys have done that's really wrong and annoying.
Yeah, but you might breeze past it like you did. Anyway.
I don't know, is that because I'm also a weeaboo? And I'm in the know? I know what itadakimasu means.
I don't know. I don't know.
I didn't even notice.
It's not even, this isn't like a really, this isn't like this isn't a comic about body pillows. You know what I mean? This is a comic that you could give to anybody.
Sure.
And they wouldn't, like important. Normies. You could give it to normies and they wouldn't enjoy it.
We should say now, this is not a genre comic, is it?
No, it's a family drama is the most I think you could assign the
In fact, if we could digress for a moment, I have a question here. Question for Kumar.
Yeah.
What is the genre of this comic?
I would label it as family drama. I think when we get into volume 2, we'll have to talk about the plot a bit. I think we get there's a little bit of soap opera in there. But again, we don't get things might shift in the later volumes because we don't have a full picture of the 9 volumes. So how much of it did you read?
I read most of these. I thought it was the whole comic. But
No.
I read most of it that you provided me.
So you probably read like 2 volumes. Yeah. So you probably read the first 2.
I did write down some. I absolutely don't want to step on your area of expertise, but I wrote down some words.
Oh, okay.
Some Japanese words.
Yeah.
So, josei.
Okay.
Is this josei or is it shoujo? You'll have to unpack these terms.
Okay, so shoujo means like a girls manga, like a little elementary school age girls.
As young as that, okay.
I would say.
Okay.
Up to maybe like age 10. And then josei, I would say, is older.
Okay.
Like maybe teenager. Or maybe a little bit older.
And both of those words pertain to comics specifically for girls, for women and for females, you'd say.
Yes, female target audience. I'm not sure I would label this. Did you read that on Wikipedia? Is that where you got that from?
I just came. I don't remember. Maybe no. This is just my own. I was just poking around, clicking on links.
Okay.
I don't think anyone specifically described it with these words.
So the parallel to that is shoujo and seinen. So shoujo is little boys manga, and seinen is like teenagers manga.
Yeah.
But what goes as teenagers manga in Japan would be like rated R in other countries, right? And even the little kids manga, like parents groups in Japan would complain about that stuff because there would be like dirty jokes and stuff, and there's stuff like that in Dragon Ball, like when the guy he's terrified of women and then he like sees Bulma naked, or Goku's never seen a woman before. Like he doesn't know what she is and what her parts are. And there's all sorts of hilarious comedy around that, and kids love it. If you're like an 8-year-old, you're like on TV, and your parents are looking at it going, "You shouldn't be reading this stuff." So it's that kind of, it's like the Mad Magazine kind of Japan, kind of in a way. So I don't know that this manga won a lot of awards in Japan. So I'm not sure how niche it is, and I don't know that it was specifically targeted. It also depends what magazine it was serialized in, because the magazines are very specifically, this is for teen girls, this is for adult women, this is for, like, every magazine has a target audience. So if you look at which magazine it ran in, that will tell you exactly who the target audience was, because usually people aren't reading out. Well, these days it might be different because you could read them online or whatever, but usually when you go into a train station or whatever and buy your magazine, you'll only be buying in your zone.
Right.
Your demographic.
We will get onto the plot.
Okay.
But before that, I just want to talk a little bit more about genre. One word that was used to describe this on TV tropes was slice of life.
Yes, I've heard that too.
In Japanese, nichijou.
Okay, Nichijou. Yeah, everyday life. Nichijou would mean everyday life. Slice of life is a word we use in American comics.
Right.
To describe similar... I wouldn't say similar. It could be, yeah, where it would not... Let's say non-genre, I guess, is the best. But it really can encompass... In the U.S., could encompass memoir comics, which is like, non-fiction. Or could also...
Yeah. Non-fiction, really? Okay.
Yeah, a slice of life could be, because you wouldn't really have any spaceships or stuff flying around.
Yeah.
Or, even real navel-gazing stuff would also... That all tends to be put under the banner of slice of life in the North American market. So this would fit in there too. I guess it's maybe even better than family drama.
The impression... Yeah. Well, but the impression I got was where you have... It's sort of about... everyday, as you said, everyday kind of like interactions where people kind of face everyday situations.
Yes.
And the situations don't build towards anything in terms of a broader narrative. They're not setting up a punchline for a joke.
Yes.
They're not foreshadowing a crisis.
But I would say these are not really everyday things that happen to these people. And I think if we can spill a little bit into this manga,
Umimachi Diary, right?
Umimachi Diary, and specifically the movie, because I think so. We're gonna have to splice these together. But the movie, Hirokazu Koreeda is a director, so he's made about 15 movies.
Yeah. Oh god, we're already on the movie.
This is the fourth one of his that I've seen, and the ones that I've seen are very similar in tone to this. But usually there is some thing, sometimes small, sometimes a little bit larger, which disrupts the family unit and causes them to have to rethink their relationships, and that's the movie. Okay.
Well, that describes the comic somewhat.
Yes, and I think so when I started reading the comic, and I thought, I saw exactly why he latched onto this material. It's exactly like the movies he's made that I've seen. Okay. It's exactly like those. So, so we'll get into the comic.
All right, cool. All right. Did you want to summarize the... Well, there's no plot as such, but there is.
There is. So this is kind of the point I was getting to, is that there is a plot. There are incidents which cause disruptions, which force them to look at the family or to reach new epiphanies or something like that, or realizations about themselves or the people around them. Sure. But certain things have to happen for that. So basically we've got these three sisters who are living together with, two of them are adult and one of them is maybe in high school.
Young adult, perhaps.
Yeah.
So they are Sachi, Yoshino, and Chika.
Yes. So Sachi's the oldest. She's kind of the responsible, upright one.
Absolutely.
She's been raising this family. She works as a nurse. Yoshino is kind of she's a bit of a drunk. She likes to drink. Yeah, she's a bit of a party girl, right? Party girl. She's been through a few different boyfriends. She has a tendency to pay for the meals and stuff for her boyfriends, and then it goes wrong or whatever. Yeah. So
she's interesting. Like she's not. People don't pay for her. She pays for them. Yes. So she's a bit of a drunk.
Yes. She works at a credit union. Yeah. So Sachi, the oldest, is always annoyed at her for her drinking and her ways with men and stuff.
And then Chika, the youngest, she's just kind of caught in the middle. Bit of a free spirit. Yeah. I thought like a bit of almost a hippie. Yes. She gets a perm.
Oh, she's actually she works at a sporting goods store. Yes. And her manager there has a big afro. Yeah. And so she gets the same haircut. And the sisters are like, okay, is something going on with these two? There must be, because she's gotten his haircut.
Yeah. Nothing ever comes of it, but it's great. That's something that can only happen in the comic, because the actor in the film obviously can't maintain an afro. Right. But in the comic book, she has this crazy afro.
But the manager shows up with that afro.
He does absolutely show up with the afro, which I love.
So what has happened is basically their father, 15 years ago, their father and mother were together, and the father left with another woman. He met another woman and took off. Yep. So they split up, and shortly afterward, the mom met some guy, and she was like, I can't deal with this, and she took off. So she left the mother left the 3 daughters with their grandparents.
Yes.
Or with the grandmother.
Yes, the grandmother. And they live in a big kind of
really
traditional
old
Japanese house.
Yes, very old house. It's kind of in a rural area of Kamakura.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they call it Kamakura. It's definitely that in the movie, but in the comic I can't remember exactly. I'm sure they must have. Anyway.
I think it is.
Okay.
But it's not important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not real important. So what happens is, suddenly out of the blue, they get a call that their father, who they haven't seen in 15 years, has died.
Yeah.
So they get a call to go to the funeral, which is in a town called Yamagata, which is... Yamagata is famous for having hot spring resorts and stuff like that, and he apparently was running an inn out there. So they go out there for the funeral, and they...
Or is it what the comic calls a ryokan?
Yes, ryokan. Yeah, better translate as ryokan, because otherwise you wouldn't get the subtle... It's got drawings. It's a comic with drawings in it. You can see what it looks like.
I just poked the bear.
Oh my
I'll be
God.
doing that again and again.
So, I really did not think I was going to get this worked up in this episode. I thought this was going to be a real laid back...
Just like the film.
I'm drinking a Japanese beer. It's Golden Week. I thought, okay. So one thing I forgot to mention was... this is he got married again. So the second wife died.
Yep.
He had a daughter from that second marriage called Suzu Asano. Asano was the dad's last name.
Yes.
And so then we learn he met a woman who was working in Yamagata, where I think he went for fishing trips or something, and he met this woman, and this woman became his third wife. Her name is Yoko, and they got married. He had 2 sons with her. And then he dies. Although, was there confusion? Was Suzu his biological daughter? I was a bit confused about it in the manga translation. It's very clear in the movie that she was born from the dad and the second wife. But in the comic, at one point it sounded like the second wife already had the daughter, and he married into that. But then later on, the grand aunt of the girls... They have this argument where Chika or Sachi says it's not her fault, she wasn't born at the time. Anyway, okay, so there's a second. So
it's all very complicated.
It's a very complicated modern family situation where this guy's had 3 wives and 3, 4, 5, 6 kids. Through 3 marriages. And
he became very ill.
Right.
So he's passed away.
Yes, he had stomach cancer, I think, and he died. And Sachi, who's a nurse, can't go to the funeral. It's an overnight train, and she's got the night shift she's a nurse. So she sends the other 2 off to this funeral, and she hopes they'll behave themselves, but, of course, Chika's Yoshino's kind of getting a bit drunk, as usual, and stuff, and there's some hijinks. They show up at the funeral. There's a question about the inheritance, because of the 2 sons, and... Was there maybe it was just because there were the 2 Yoko's 2 sons that they wanted the inheritance to, and how it was going to get split up.
Yeah, they give up the inheritance essentially.
Yes, they end up. So
Sachi shows up after all. In the comic, it's the next day.
Yes. In
the film, we're already onto the film. In the film, it's the same day.
Yeah.
She just arrives. Yeah. For whatever reason, and
she got a drive from a friend.
That's right.
Who we learn later. But we have to rewind a little bit about Yoshino's current boyfriend, who works on a Navy ship or something, as far as we know. But they have a little meeting before the funeral where he's like, stuff changes at funerals, like dramatic things can happen. And she's like, okay. And I'll bring that up.
This in-depth plot discussion is going to taper off very quickly, I think.
Yeah, so anyway.
But this is how everything's set up.
Yes, so they go to the funeral. Yoko is a complete mess.
This is the mother.
Yeah, she's the widow, rather. Yeah, she's weeping. She's supposed to give a speech. She can't do it. She's supposed to carry the coffin to the crematorium. She's like, I can't do it. But Sachi comes in. She tries to get.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sachi shows up now, and it comes to pass that the uncle or something says that it's time for a traditional kind of speech, address from the chief mourner, who in this case should be the widow. But the widow, as you said, is a mess. She can't do it, and she's just like, "Oh, we'll just get Suzu to do it."
Yes, and Suzu's like 14, 15.
She's 15 in the film. I think younger, 13. I think in the comic.
Okay, yeah.
So this is like a young kid, and the mom's just like, Suzu will do it. Suzu's so great. She's been so she's very grown up for her age.
Yeah.
And Sachi, who, for reasons which we understand, because she is the eldest and had to look after her younger sisters for so many years when both of her parents abandoned them, she just sees that immediately for what it is, what we in this day and age call parentification, and said, no, she's a kid.
Yeah.
You're an adult.
Yes.
You're going to get up there and give that
Yeah.
oration. And the mother's just kind of a bit gobsmacked, and the widow rather, and does eventually. But the writing's on the wall, and once the funeral's done, Suzu takes... Again, Suzu's the one that met them at the train station, met the two younger sisters, Yoshino and Chika, at the train station, walked them to where they were going to be staying, walks them to the train station when they're all leaving. Then we have the impulsive decision, apparently
before this, there's an important moment I want to mention.
Oh, good.
So, as they're leaving the crematorium and the three older sisters are together, Sachi's like, that woman, she didn't take care of him in the hospital. She's the kind of woman, because she knows, she's seen this happen so many times as a nurse. She's like, she says, Yoko's the kind of woman that shows up for 10 minutes, brings something and goes away, because she just can't handle it. So she's like, I'll bet you it was Suzu that actually took care of our father. And she asks Suzu that. They go up to this mountaintop together. They overlook the view, and the view looks very much like Kamakura, except you can't see the ocean. But it's like that kind of idyllic woods and stuff, and the little village and stuff.
Right.
And they're like, so they go up there, and Sachi says to Suzu, she says, "You're the one that actually took over her father, right?"
Yes.
And she has a breakdown. She kind of, not a breakdown. She starts crying. She finally unleashes this emotion in this moment, and then they go to they find it's the end of the day, and she takes them all to the train station.
And then Sachi, the responsible sister, who has this twofold perspective on what Suzu's been going through, both as an eldest responsible sibling and as a nurse working with hospice patients, seems to, in a moment very out of character from what we know so far, invites Suzu to come and live with them in their big house in Kamakura. And she, just live with them. They'll look after her. All three of them have jobs. Their family. They'll all just live in this big house. And
she has no blood relation to this woman and her two kids. Her two sons.
Right, that's important, isn't it?
Yeah. She's not actually blood related to them. Because she's from the second marriage.
Right, which is why it's okay that she just takes off. That's an important point. Because I was wondering why the widow didn't have much to say about
as I was saying, with Koreeda's movies, there's usually some flashpoint. There's something that happens that causes the family to so this first chapter, this manga is 70 pages long. And that's like the end of the chapter when they get on there. Actually, I think at the very end of the chapter, we see her moving into the house. She starts to move into the house in Kamakura. But my prediction was, okay, this is going to be the whole movie. It's going to be the first chapter. Based on what I know from his previous movies.
Right.
And that was not the case at all.
No, not at all.
That's the first 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
So, so what happens is they come... So once Suzu moves in with them, then it's basically... We get to the real slice-of-life family drama stuff. But again, I think it's more than slice of life, because I think stuff does happen. Like, we find out that Yoshino's boyfriend is actually in high school. Yeah. It's revealed.
Yeah, I agree. There's this... And I remember you said soap opera earlier. Now, I think... so, as you say, things happen. Yeah. There are these vignettes. So, essentially, there are chapters in the forthcoming... the two volumes that we read, and generally they'll revolve around an occurrence. Yeah. The discovery about the boyfriend. Yeah. In another one, Suzu joins the local soccer team, and one of the star kicker gets his leg amputated. Yeah. Right. This is like serious business. Yeah. But I think so. These kind of feel like soap opera-y moments. Finding out your boyfriend is actually a high school student. Also, he owes money to some kind of
a guy who's blackmailing him because that guy slept with his mother.
Yeah. And this all sounds very lurid, but actually, there's no real kind of sense of urgency, right? Yes. Or stakes. It's very kind of languid.
It's very much like the place they're living. It's like they're like living in the quiet countryside, and these things happen, and they're not making dramatic. But I think the thing is that they happen in a row. I think the problem is they happen in a row.
Well, I mean, I imagine this is a comic, right? So this is being published. on a monthly schedule?
I don't know.
Or...
It could have been weekly or monthly, yeah.
So
Probably
it's
monthly.
not all happening at once. This is your episode. It's episodic, isn't it?
Yes.
But I mean, it never you never got that kind of sense of catastrophe that you would from watching a soap opera.
No, you get a sense that they're gonna resolve it somehow.
Well, with the guy that's blackmailing him, he just returns the money.
Yes.
In his letterbox.
Yeah.
Remember? So that's how that's resolved.
Yeah.
It's like it's set up. This guy, this guy's blackmailing me. He slept with his mother. He looks vaguely sinister like a gangster.
Yeah.
And then it's like, no, he just puts the money back in my letterbox.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's almost too light. Like the thing with the kid that gets his leg amputated, there's actually a lot of investigation of his feelings about that, and how he doesn't want to be pitied, and how people are treating him different. All that kind of stuff is kind of explored.
Yes.
But only to a certain extent. So it made me think of another a manga called Real by Takehiko Inoue, which is about wheelchair basketball. And that is intense. That comic is really full on. Like, you really feel it. He's really explored every aspect of it. And this is what's happened. That comic was out at the time this was coming out. So this is almost like real light. It's just like a side story that's going on. All these other things are happening.
It's like we're certainly getting a view to and this is what it's all about. It's all about characterization, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, we're very much getting what people are thinking and feeling. But there's, when I say there's no stakes, we know we don't think, like the cops aren't going to come.
No.
Or ridicule or social ostracization isn't going to occur. There's no sense of impending catastrophe or doom. Instead, it's very much kind of like interpersonal interaction. I found it kind of relaxing almost to read.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like a cozy kind of thing. Well, you know what the moment that you think maybe something's going to really explode is it's every a set number of years they have anniversaries for deaths of people who've passed away, obviously.
Right.
So, so there's the anniversary of the grandma's death. One of them is coming up.
Right.
And they get a call from grandma's sister, the great aunt, who says, your mom called and she's in a shop. Now, at this stage in the manga, we didn't really know if the mom was alive or what. We just know that she took off with some guy. Yeah. But apparently she's living up in Hokkaido, which is like way far north. Yeah. It's as far north as you can get. And she's married this guy or whatever. She's living up there, but she skipped the first two memorials for Grandma, but she's coming back for this one. And they're like, well, what sisters are like, especially Sachi, the oldest one, is like, well, what's this about really? Why is she showing up now?
Yeah.
Why'd she not come for in the last 6 years for the last two or whatever? But we find out they've actually been in contact or whatever. So the mom shows up. And they go to this memorial or whatever. It's a bit awkward because Suzu is there, who is the daughter of the woman that broke up the marriage.
Yeah, that's right.
This is like kind of a touchy thing. And this is where we get a little moment between Sachi and the aunt, where the aunt is like, "Are you sure you want to raise a kid?" And Sachi's like, "I can do this. Don't worry about me." And she's like, "Yeah, but she's the girl who broke up your dad's married, your mom's married, whatever." Okay, so she comes to town, and then she's suddenly off the cuff says, "I'm thinking about selling this house." And Sachi's like, well, "You have no right. How dare you walk in here after being away for 15 years and suddenly say you haven't done any work on this house, and you say you're going to sell it?" And then she's like, "Okay, I'm not going to sell it." And so it's just like, they have an argument about it.
Then it just blows over.
There's some hot feelings, and there's some resentment about it. But she changes her mind. Okay, I'm not going to sell the house.
She just backs down almost straight away.
She backs in almost straight away, and
this would be a big kind of like drama.
Yeah, and then the next day, the mom comes to the house again to quietly drop off some presents that she'd forgot to bring the day before, and all the heated argument. And surprised to find Sachi there. She's forgotten that she's a nurse and works weird hours. And it's like, oops, she's here. And so it's like, "I'll walk you to the station." They go to the station. By the way, in the manga, we have to mention that because it's the manga, there's like first-person narration. We get people's thoughts firsthand.
Yes.
So she's like, "Okay, I'll walk you to the station." And she gives her some of the plum wine, which her grandmother had bottled like years ago, and sends her off with it as a memento. Yeah. And she's like, the mom's like, "Come visit us in Hokkaido sometime." And Sachi has a little narration voiceover that's like, I know we're not going to visit her up there, but You know, so they have like they're kind of mending these fences as much as they can.
The plum wine, they keep it under the floorboards.
Yes.
And they have a plum tree in the garden.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
And Suzu drinks some plum wine at one point, and she drinks the wrong batch. She wanted to try the plum wine, but she ended up drinking the batch that the party girl had beefed up.
Yeah.
And that she has only when she's drunk does she really let loose, and I think she says, well, I hate you, mother. I hate you, father. Yeah.
It's funny, I'm trying to... It's a little bit later than... Usually I've read this and watched the movie like the day before we record. And this was a few days ago, but the movie's so close in a lot of ways that I'm like, was that in the movie or the comic? And it's... so then it kind of ends with the 1-year anniversary of the dad's death. So they have to go back to Yamagata for that memorial, and and we also learned that the dad, Sachi considers him kind of a failure because he lent money to friends. He felt sorry for his friends who needed money, and so he acted as a guarantor on their loans, and that ended up with him getting in serious debt, which ruined him. And also, he felt sorry for Suzu's mother, which is how he ended up with her. Yeah. It wasn't like that seems to be the love connection.
All three of his wives had a similar kind of personality.
Yes, and it's also Yoshino's behavior with her boyfriends is like she picks up these guys that don't got any money and she's buying meals for them and drinks for them and all that kind of stuff because they're too poor.
Well, they have debt. They owe debts to...
Yes, to guys that are blackmailing because they slept with their mother.
And they're in high school.
Yeah.
It sounds much more lurid than it is. It's so matter of fact.
Yes. Yeah.
It's charming. This comic was really charming, I thought.
Yeah, it really was. And another thing about it is the art is, it's kind of, it's simple, it's pretty sketchy. It's almost, she goes for comedy moments too, like that moment where Yoshino finds out her boyfriend is in high school. She's actually working so she's lied to him and told him that she works at some international company.
Yes.
But she's working at this local credit union.
Yes.
And he walks in wearing a high school uniform, and she says, and there's this whole slapstick routine where she tries to hide her face from him and stuff, and all this kind of business to cover it up. But at other moments, like when Suzu has her breakdown, when she cries when she admits that she took care of her father in hospital, not her mother, Yoshida is very able to zoom in on those, really zero in on the facial expressions, and nail them. And also there's a moment where Suzu, I think it's after the memorial and all the family as a whole, all the arguing's going on, she has another moment where she cries where she's like, it's my fault that this family is like this because of my mom was the one. And again, anytime there's a moment like that, and also there's a very important moment we didn't mention where Sachi remembers, so she keeps going on about how their dad was a loser who left them, who abandoned them, but then she remembers the time that she hurt her leg or something when they were on vacation and he had to bike into town in the middle of the night and get some bandages or something and come back, and she actually has a bit of a cry remembering that moment.
Everyone's complicated.
Yes.
No one's a stereotype or a cliche. Everybody has debts.
Yes.
Including the kind-hearted but weak-willed kind of father who attracted debts and frail women.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of the first two volumes. And we don't know what happens in the volumes 3 through 9. The spin-off is about actually one of the so when they go back for the dad's memorial. I don't know if you read this far, but they go back for the memorial. They find out that the Yoko, wife number 3, left town with one of the sons, and left one son behind with the uncle. So the spin-off is about that one son that's been left behind.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know if we...
That's pretty much... We've covered the comic.
Yes.
All right, shall we move on to... You've talked a little bit about the film and about the director. Do you want to tell us a bit more about the director?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what their is more to say. So as I said, this is the fourth movie that I've seen. He's a really...
This is an award-winning Japanese
award-winning.
director.
He's the every time there's a movie, there's a Cannes award thing that happens. Like there's a photo of him at Cannes with the cast, and they win the Palme d'Or or something like that.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I think this one, like I was looking at some of the reviews, and a lot of the others are like, 5 stars. This is the one that's rated a bit lower, like 3.5 or something. But
this is the one that didn't win the Palme d'Or.
It's called Our Little Sister in English, but the actual Japanese title is still Umimachi Diary.
Right.
They changed the titles of his works, I've noticed. Anyway. He did do another manga adaptation called Air Doll in 2009. That one there's not even a fan translation of it, so we're not covering it. Apparently that movie is not
You can translate it, Kumar.
Yeah.
Well, we start a GoFundMe right
and
here.
I think it's a little bit science fiction. I think it's about like a robot or something.
I'm interested.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested.
We could start a GoFundMe.
But normally he's done one thing called, what was it called? There was some kind of murder mystery one that he's done, but I'm like, really? Because to me he's so understated, and he reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever seen any movies by Yasujiro Ozu, who was like a director from the 50s and 60s, and he directed famously Tokyo Story and another movie called Autumn Afternoon, and they're really just people sitting around talking. And Tokyo Story is about this old couple that like basically they're living out in the country, and they go to visit Tokyo, and they stay in this hotel next door. There are these people having this wild party. They're hearing the noise, and then they go home. That's the end of the movie, pretty much. And that's why I thought this movie was going to be the dad's funeral, and it was going to end with Suzu having her cry, and then that was going to be the end. And I was very surprised that was, as I said before, banged out in 15
more
minutes.
Faithful adaptation than that.
Really faithful, and a lot of stuff shaved out. The soap opera was shaved out.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff.
Yes. Some of the more, how would you say,
really dramatic, like overly
some of the
dramatic.
Extreme, and this is, I think, the change from the episodic formula of a comic that's published on a schedule to your film, which is still told in this fragmentary kind of compartmentalized style. We don't really have an overarching plot. I mean, as you say, we have the setup, which is Suzu coming to live, the father dying and Suzu coming to live with them. And then they sort of just have these encounters, which are based closely on the encounters that occur in the comic, but with a lot of the detail toned down.
Yes.
So the boyfriend is not a high schooler, for example.
No, so when he walks into the bank, he walks into the credit union and sees her, so we even got her lie about but he comes in with this guy that he's owing the money to,
Yes.
which is the same as in the comic.
Yeah.
But he's just like, this guy's like, hurry up, get the money.
Yeah.
He's just like, hurry up.
Yeah. Well,
so the guy the boyfriend gives him, and then we cut to her getting a phone call when she's on the roof of the bank, the credit union, and he's like, yeah, I owe that guy money. I gave him the money that you lent me, sorry.
Yeah.
The end.
And that's it.
That's the end of that relationship. We don't get the blackmail. We don't get him being in high school. We don't get her lies about working at some international firm.
And we don't get the odd denouement where the blackmailer returns the money and leaves.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, broad strokes, it's similar, but a lot of kind of
same
like
line dialogue's almost word for word. I mean, based on the translation, but it's all the same. Like, there's even a moment when she's moving in, and Suzu's says, I'll help you with the cooking, and Sachi's like, no, you unpack, because you know where your stuff goes. And then they're upstairs, and then Chika's like, these hallways are so narrow. All those words came right out of the comic. So it wasn't like Koreeda was like, oh, this is some dumb comic. He was like really respectful to the material.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I should mention too that he almost always writes and edits his own movies.
Really?
I don't know many any other directors, except for like maybe John Sayles, that edit their own movies. But he has real, complete, laser precise control of the tempo in every movie that he does. So exactly where the cut happens, and how long are we going to look at these mountains, and how long are we going to
it's certainly beautifully shot.
Yeah.
So I mean, differently, the art in the comic, it's fine, but it's not spectacular or particularly elaborate or beautiful.
Yes.
The film, on the other hand, is gorgeous.
Yeah.
So many, like, lovely rural vistas.
Yeah.
And, like, the mountaintop scenes that you mentioned being broadly similar, the ocean scene, the forest scene.
There was stuff in here, in terms of nature, that I thought was in the comic, that I thought, that's not going to be in the movie. There's a scene where this guy named Tada on the soccer team, who kind of has some feelings for Suzu, thinks she's kind of cute or something, but it's very, very understated.
Yes.
But he's like, hey, you want to go someplace? And she's like, oh, okay, where? On my bike? And they go down his bike, and he says, it's a cherry blossom tunnel. And they go down this road, which is like cherry blossoms on both sides.
Yes.
And they did it in the movie. They found, and I'm like, did they CG this? How did they find this cherry blossom tunnel that they could actually ride his bike through? And it's and there's also another scene where they're looking at the fall leaves, and the leaves are. And I'm like, did they CG the falling leaves, like with the red and yellow, orange leaves? And but he must have shot over the course of a year, I'm guessing,
Unfortunately, I understand I'm something of a font of trivia when it comes to.
Yeah, I just don't know how.
It's very hard to find anything about this movie online.
Actually, I did watch the credits. I don't remember seeing a CG team of any sort on there.
I would love to believe.
But I will rewatch those credits and see if there, because I don't think there was. I don't think they. Well, I don't know how much this stuff is popular in Japan. It's popular at Cannes, that's for sure. But maybe it's probably, I don't know how much money a studio would actually throw at him to be like, yeah, you can CG a cherry blossom tunnel.
Well, is it cheaper to CG it than to go and shoot on location and find
true too. Find this another moment when
paint every blossom Tsiolkovsky style.
When Sachi is walking her mother to the train station, as in the comic, but in the movie it's actually raining heavily. So they're out there with umbrellas, and then when they're visiting the grandmother's grave, it stops raining, and the mom mentions it. And then you see them at the train station, or you see them walking around, there's like puddles everywhere. I'm like, okay, so was the scene written with rain, and did they use a rain machine? Because it looks like it really rained. Or did they by some miracle shoot it all in one day, and she mentions that it stopped raining? Or I just can't imagine how he captured the nature.
Right.
Like the rain and the fall leaves and the cherry blossoms. I just did not. It was a marvel in that respect.
Right. Well, you'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
And if you'd like to know the answer to that, please email Kumar on the email in the show notes, or just Google it. Probably take the same amount of time. Yeah.
I did write down the name of the cinematographer, Mikiya Takimoto. I just wrote it down out of respect because there was no Wikipedia link to what this.
Some of the scenes. There's a particular. My favourite scene is when they've just returned to the house after one of their funerals, the one that the mother attends. So one of the memorials, rather, the one that the mother attends. And it's a wide shot, and all the characters are in frame, and they're all doing things.
Yeah.
They're just moving around the room, exchanging glances, exchanging words. The great aunt is unpacking sweets or ice cream or something. The mother and one of the daughters is in the foreground, placating the household god or the idol or whatever that thing is. And it's just... It's just remarkably shot.
Yeah,
like just great. No one has specific. No one's in center shot. No one has specific emphasis. It's just there's just the bustle of a house, but not a kind of domestic bustle because they're all in their mourning gear. Yeah. But they're still doing these ordinary things like unpacking. It just really just kind of like absolutely my favorite shot in the film.
Yeah, and there's a lot of those moments of, I don't know, I don't want to say silence or nothing happening, but there are things that just don't really have bearing on the plot.
Well, true. Well, what plot? I mean, a lot of nothing happens in this movie.
Yes, what plot, exactly, yeah.
So there is no... I mean, it all kicks off the way you described, with Suzu coming to live with him. And from then on, nothing happens.
Yes. Well,
there's no plot, right?
Yeah. That's right. So we get a little bit. So
there's no plot.
There's a structure. I would say, because we get
The structure
introduced...
would be the various funerals and memorials. Because
Yes,
one occurs roughly every, half hour?
Yeah. So we get this, there's this character named Ninomiya, who is she runs a diner.
Yes.
That is frequented.
Yep.
Literally often by these three sisters, and they have for years and years. They've been coming to this place.
She does fried mackerel.
Yes. And she shows up Sachi, the nurse, sees her at the hospital one day. She's got some stomach problems.
Yep.
And my wife turned to me and said, that's stomach cancer. That's what that's going to be.
And sure enough.
Yeah. That's always what it is in a movie. Nobody has a tummy ache. That's just and there's an amazing scene. So Sachi is dating this doctor, a married doctor.
Yes.
In the comics, not quite clear what the status of the marriage is. Here, he seems to be living in an apartment by himself, so they seem to be clearly separated, is my guess. But she comes over and cooks for him in his apartment. Yeah. So this is her deal. And it's like that scene where Suzu's moving in. She won't let Suzu help with the meal at that stage anyway.
But it's interesting, because Sachi, Sachi's supposed to be the moral... Well, she's the one that looks after the kids, and she's the one that's on Yoshino's case for being a drunk and for running around with boys and not knowing enough about them.
Yeah.
And yet, at the same time, she's essentially having an affair, isn't she?
Yes.
Well, he's having an affair with her.
Yeah. And that's kind of... it comes up when Suzu says, my dad had an affair with a married... Or my mom had an affair with a married man. That's a wrong thing to do or something. And
yes, that's right.
She feels that keenly. And it's all, again... It's not the comics, so everything is done with lingering shots on people's faces.
No one's thinking stuff. This isn't Dune.
No,
we're not having Kyle MacLachlan telling us what he's thinking.
Yeah. It's all just you gotta, and it's like that moment where Sachi leaves her mom at the train station. She says you should come up to Hokkaido sometime, and Sachi just looks at her.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. We just get the look on the face. Yeah. But everything's in it. The crickets, they talk about these giant crickets that come into the house, the crickets in the movie, the plum wines in the movie.
Yes.
All the dialogue. Some things, so that when Yoshino and her boyfriend talk about the funeral, it actually happens after the fact in the movie. So it's been resequenced in some ways. Yeah, and that's where she tells, it just comes up in dialogue. She says, my sister Sachi decided to give up the inheritance. That's her choice.
Yeah. There's much more discussion about it in the movie, isn't there? Oh, sorry, in the manga, rather.
In the comic. Yeah, the whole scenes about it.
Yes.
Also, like the conversation with the great aunt where she says, it's hard work taking care of a kid, comes earlier, I think, in the movie. I think that's been moved to an earlier point.
This is a necessity, isn't it? I mean, we can't... it would be a series, a TV series, if we had every...
Yes.
Instead, he has to... He has to simplify the circumstances, the situations. Yeah. We have to have less dialogue, obviously no internal monologue.
Yeah.
And he's also, as you say, sanded off some of the more spectacular occurrences, such as, the high school boy.
Yes, and Yuya as a character and him losing the leg is not in it at all. But there is Tada takes her on the bike ride through the tunnel, as I said. Yeah, and also there's a wonderful moment where they're getting ready for fireworks. I kept thinking this movie was going to end. I said, okay, the fireworks is going to be the climax of the movie. It's not. It keeps going.
That's what I thought too. With
every time something happens, it's the grandma's memorial. This is going to be the end of the movie. No, it keeps going after. There's fire. There's going to be no.
And then when it did end, it was a surprise because they were just walking on a beach. Right?
Yeah.
After yet another funeral.
But they go so. Sachi picks out this kimono for Suzu to wear to the fireworks, and she's like, "No, I'll just wear my uniform." But then she wears the kimono anyway, and we don't get her why she changed her mind or anything like that. She's just wearing it in the next scene.
Yeah.
And she hangs out, and there's a moment I absolutely loved where Tada says, "You look good in that kimono."
Yeah.
She says, "See you tomorrow," and that's kind of the extent of it.
So many moments like that.
So great.
They're not building to anything.
No.
In a regular kind of, in something, in like a sitcom or something, it would be building to a gag.
Yeah.
Nothing's building to anything.
Yeah.
It just It just rumbles along.
Yeah, and you really feel like, I thought, okay, after the memorial, I thought, okay, this fight with the mother is going to be the end of the movie. Because it's really a major build-up point to this fight, because even after the fight, Yoshino attacks her older sister, Sachi, and says, you took in Suzu to spite Mom.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And it's like, she doesn't have a response to that. It's like, maybe it's true.
Maybe it is true. We don't know. I noticed that as well. We don't get... Again, there's no resolution.
Yeah.
It's just... Yeah, that's right. We're just invited to think about...
But I thought, okay, this has got to be the end of the movie. Like, this is an emotional climax. Surely,
No, the movie just kind of peters out.
Yeah.
Which is perfect, frankly.
Yes.
Because that's the kind of the way the whole film has been.
Yes. Yeah.
Alright, so any other...
Oh, so very, very close to the end, we see there's a beam on the wall where they've measured the girls, the 3 sisters at each year, and Sachi invites Suzu to get measured, and she marks her height on it, and that's actually the climax of the movie. There's no music or anything, but I do believe that is the turning point. You are part of this family now.
Right.
You're one of us.
Sure.
I think that's the key. Maybe that's the final, because I think it's pretty close to. Oh, so we haven't mentioned. So Ninomiya dies. We haven't mentioned. There's a whole character. This guy, I don't even know his name, but Ninomiya. There's this older guy who runs a cafe called the Beach Muffin or something. But he serves. What does he serve? Like anchovies on toast or something, or
anchovies on rice.
On rice. Yeah. Yes. Was it on rice or on toast?
Whitebait on rice.
Whitebait on rice. And Suzu's a little bit surprised by it. She's like a bit curious about this, and we don't know why until later. She says to her friend, she's like, my dad used to offer me that, so I wonder if he ate at that cafe. I wonder if that's where he got the recipe from. And then later on, the guy that runs a cafe, and that guy has been in other Koreeda movies too. He's like one of the... I think a few of these actors might have been in some of the others, but anyway, he invites her, he says, or is it him, says, if you ever want to talk about your dad, he kind of figures it out. He's like, if you ever want to talk to your dad, come ask me anytime. And I think this is maybe at Ninomiya's funeral.
It is at Ninomiya's funeral. It's right at the end of the film.
Yeah, her funeral is kind of the bookend of the film. If we consider the measuring the climax, maybe you consider her death the climax. I don't know, but it doesn't. Unlike the comic, it's not bookended by the 1-year memorial. Even though we've seen 4 seasons, it doesn't end with the memorial of.
No, it's Ninomiya's funeral.
It's Ninomiya, but again, maybe Ninomiya is introduced as a character somewhere in further volumes. We don't know.
I'm sure.
It's quite possible that she is a character, and maybe the manga even ends with her death. We don't know at this stage. So the relationship with the doctor falls apart because he's going overseas to study, and it's just kind of like, so yeah.
That's it. It just ends. Yeah.
Just ends.
We're not really invited to draw any lessons or conclusions from it.
She's bummed out about it, but she was, after that thing that Suzu said, she was kind of feeling like, I'm dating a married dude. He's not officially divorced yet or whatever. Don't know.
She just gets on with her life.
Yeah.
It's remarkable the way that just keeps happening.
Yeah.
Any other positives?
Positives? I love this movie. I really did love it.
I'm so glad.
Oh, God. Because I had a feeling you were going to come in and hate this movie.
Okay, now Kumar. All right, let you go first.
Okay, I'm going to say, so I was, despite the 3.5-star reviews instead of 5-star reviews for this that I saw online, I was totally transfixed by it.
Okay.
I think it's true that nothing happens, but I think it has a structure, and I think things happen within that structure, and I think you're really forced to lean in and just observe the actors and what you're being shown, as you pointed out in that shot earlier. So I absolutely loved it. I've loved all the other movies that I've seen by him as well.
All right, that's fantastic.
Okay.
Because I have a terrible confession.
Okay.
Despite that, I've been singing this movie's praises.
Okay.
I was bored to tears watching it.
Okay, I predicted this would happen.
So bored.
Okay.
This movie's 2 hours long.
Yeah.
This movie's 2 hours long.
Yeah, flew by.
It is so long. And it's just like and nothing happens in it. It has these great moments, and the performances I love. I think the people in it are cast really well. I thought Chika as the youngest, not Suzu. I thought she was really well cast.
Yes.
Apparently that girl's she's goofy looking. Apparently she's a model actually. Like the actor is a model.
So one of the actors, we haven't mentioned their names because I don't remember them, but one of them we noticed watching the credits only had one name.
Yeah, that was Chika.
And that was Chika. That was her. I guessed. Yeah. I just had this hunch, like, okay, because just maybe from 6 years of Japanese pop culture,
and,
I was like...
The actor playing Suzu is very much, I understand, a rising star in Japanese cinema.
Okay.
17 years old when she made this film.
Okay.
And that's hence the age lift to 15.
Right.
In the film, I honestly think she looks older. Frankly, I think she looks about 20 years old in the film.
No, I didn't feel that.
No, she seemed pretty mature. Maybe it's just a consequence of how grown up she behaves, but I wasn't buying it. Well, first of all, I thought she was supposed to be 12, and I'm like, this girl is not 12. But she's... Right. This is not a complaint. This is just an observation. Yeah, in fact, a lot of this forthcoming discussion is going to be observations, not complaints.
Okay. What? Okay.
No, you got it.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, I'm sorry, this movie bored. I was so bored.
Okay.
I couldn't wait for it to end. I have to say, you got to be careful what you wish for.
Okay.
Because in the last week, I believe I said, with Josie and the Pussycats, I wanted less plot. I wanted more substance.
More gags.
I did. I went less. What did I say? Less vessel, more gag.
Yeah.
And it was the same complaint that I had about Dick Tracy, and most notoriously about Ghost World. I thought the big problem with Ghost World was that it didn't lean into that episodic storytelling, disconnected vignette style storytelling, which was in Ghost World. And the big problem with Ghost World was that they'd stapled on this plot with Seymour, which I was absolutely not buying. Well, I got my wish, Kumar, because this film, obviously, like as you said, it has a structure.
Yeah.
It has themes. It absolutely has themes.
Yeah.
Themes to do with memory, to do with and family and mortality, obviously. But the fact that it didn't have a plot, I could not stay focused on it.
I think it has a plot.
It does have a plot, but it doesn't have much of a plot. I think very much
woven it in a way like Ninomiya her cafe is going to close because her brother, estranged brother, is trying to claim it, and the credit she's kind of talking to Yoshino, who works at that bank, to try to get a loan from them, and then she's like, you know what, I've got stomach cancer, I'm not going to bother.
That's a subplot.
Yes, but it ties. It's an anchor, let's say. There's a few anchors that go through.
To say that it has no plot is an exaggeration and probably unfair. It doesn't follow standard storytelling beats.
Sure.
Right. Which is praise, if anything. But I think my problem was...
You know what, it's... Okay, so
I think my problem is, first of all, I didn't think I had the right mindset sitting down to watch it.
I would say that's been true of half the movies that we've watched in the podcast.
That feels very personal. That feels like an attack. But we'll...
it is an attack.
Let's move on.
It is absolutely an attack.
I think my other problem is that I read the comic first. I reckon if I hadn't read the comic first, I would have got a lot more out of this movie.
Okay.
But the fact that I read the comic first and got these kind of more detailed, more discursive short stories.
Right.
And then to come into the film, and it almost felt anodyne and a bit washed out.
I know, I understand what you mean, especially with the boyfriend plotline, because there's, that's kind of juicy in the comic. And here it's like, well, maybe she didn't need to have a boyfriend in the first place, but it does demonstrate what kind of guys she allows into her life.
And what kind of person she is, too, in the way that she's like her father.
And that she's, and that she's kind of oblivious to...
Yeah, again, this is fine. It's all present. I just feel like it's less colourful and as a consequence, less interesting. This is purely subjective.
Mm-hmm. No, it's all subjective. My positive review is purely completely subjective.
But to say that, I can definitely see the things like Vannie, who I watched this with, my wife. She absolutely loved it. Just loved it.
Interesting.
Loved it. How did your Mrs. Georgina feel about it? Yeah,
she loved it.
Okay, so I'm the outlier here.
Yeah, but I think you know what? Okay, you could apply everything you've just said to Grave of the Fireflies. Nothing happens.
My wife brought up Grave of the Fireflies.
No
as
plot.
A point of comparison.
Nothing happens. They're alive and then they're dead. The end.
Yep.
And to me, and that was what I was trying to kind of pinpoint that thing about the moments where that seem to have no bearing on the plot. Like there's a moment where Suzu is super. She's like hot, and she gets out of the bath, and she decides to dry herself in front of the fan.
In front of a fan.
She opens her towel in front. We don't see anything. We see her from behind. But her sister comes. I'm like, okay, something's going to happen here. No, her sister comes and says, "Cover yourself up," and has a laugh. She laughs about it.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the end of the scene.
Perfect
I'm like,
summary of the way the film does its storytelling.
This is where
no stakes. No one wanders by.
There's no stakes, but we've had a change in Sachi's behavior, because I don't think she would have giggled about that with her other sisters before, or maybe wouldn't have even giggled about it with Suzu before. I
just feel like there's no threat of public ridicule or shame.
No.
She just dries herself in front of a towel out on the veranda, essentially.
Yeah.
In front, and Sachi comes out and scolds her, says, "What if someone came by?"
Yeah.
And then they giggle, and then scene ends.
Yeah.
And that's it. We're not really invited. I mean, as you say, like, perhaps their relationship has changed. Sachi's
I think that's why
accepted
that
her,
movie.
Or she's loosened up a bit.
I actually think all these things are in the movie. I think the cherry blossom tunnel is not there just to be beautiful. You see the bliss on Suzu's face on that bike, which you don't really get from the comic, but you also get a sense that we've gone through 2 seasons, we know, because of this moment. We know how she's fitting into Kamakura, as opposed to what she was like in Yamagata. All these things are encoded in there.
It's good. You were
So I never felt like when's something going to happen, because something was always happening, as far as I was concerned.
So I'm so pleased, because I certainly wanted to enjoy it, but just couldn't. I just wasn't invested enough.
Yeah.
And as I said, it's partly personal failing.
You know what?
And partly, I think, because... And with Grave of the Fireflies, obviously I love Grave of the Fireflies, it's a masterpiece. But I haven't read any... I read no Grave of the Fireflies comic before I sat down to watch it. Would that have made a difference? Perhaps, but on the logic that I'm running with.
Well, it was based on a novel. Right. An autobiographical novel, so...
Perhaps.
I don't know if that's available in English, but maybe that would have affected
maybe not. I think in this case, it's so much like the comic.
Yeah.
To preempt what I'm going to say about it as an adaptation, it's a fantastic adaptation because it so closely mirrors those encapsulated little tales that have no stakes, no payoff, and are just to explore the characters,
right?
And they're kind of like their thoughts and their feelings and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I think it's really great. And the only problem with me is that I read the comic and liked it and saw the film and it was just kind of more of the same but with less detail. I'm sorry, I'm such a Philistine.
I think the detail... Look, I think the detail is in the cinematography and in the acting. I think that's what I think this is a perfect substitute for those aspects of the comic book.
Yes, and in fact I agree. I've even written it down. This detail. Look, no, I do agree with you. I can't help the way I am. Yeah. I've even written it down. I've said it's an adaptation. The detail that I'm missing is being replaced by something exclusive to the film medium.
Yes. Like
the beautiful scenery.
Yes.
And then I've written here just for you. So this isn't exactly a criticism, more of an observation.
Yeah.
Please don't see it as an attack, Kumar. I would recommend this film to anyone, but I would say don't read the comic first.
I wonder if he's going for something archetypal, something Jungian, with 4 sisters, because...
Oh, that didn't occur to me at all.
Well, there's a Japanese novel by Junichiro Tanizaki called The Makioka Sisters. I'm pretty sure that's 4 sisters. And it's available, you can get it in English. It's like 500-600 pages. Nothing happens. It's awesome. It's one of the best books I've ever read.
Yeah, you lent it to me. It's on my Tsundoku pile.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize I had lent it out. It's amazing.
But Georgina, I think, gave it to me when you went looking.
Okay, you're not gonna like it because there's zero. There's incident, but there's no overarching plot. But also, as we were watching it, there's a moment where all four girls are looking out the window at the plum tree at the same time with like their faces, and she's like, "Oh, this is like Little Women," and I was like, "Yeah, it's the Four Sisters. It's that same structure. So maybe." We're hanging our hat on that a little bit too, is like we're counting on that to convey a kind of some kind of structure in itself somehow that people respond to or it resonates somehow. I don't know.
And to throw something in to defend myself now.
Okay.
Or something I've written down. All right, so I'm not obsessed with plot and genre. When Felix was little, when my son was little, the books that we really loved reading together tended to be the ones that were written for girls.
Okay.
Because the ones that were written for girls tend to be about this kind of thing, like characters, feelings.
Yep.
You have characterization in these novels written for girls. The ones written for boys tend to be, about farts or
right.
I live in a treehouse and Attack of the Giant Bums and stuff like that, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I think Felix really enjoyed, and I really enjoyed something. Because even when I was a kid, I used to pinch my sister's Babysitters Club books.
Right.
But I read anything when I was a kid. But I would pinch or books about gymnasts. The female gymnast. There used to be a series called The Gymnast that she used to read that she really loved.
Judy Blume?
Judy Blume, Yeah, exactly. And, as I said, I watched this one with Vannie, with my wife, and I said to her, "Nah, I don't think I liked it, darling." And she said, "Is that because it didn't have lasers in it?" And I resent that remark.
I feel like you've said that yourself in some episodes that we've done where you're like, this movie didn't have any lasers in it.
It doesn't have any... Well, look, I like my science fiction, I like my genre stuff. There's something that I like to tell this story. And this is a listener to the podcast that told me this story. One time he took me to his bookshelf and he pointed at a book by Jodi Picoult or something. And he said, "John, this book has great characters. It has an interesting story. It has people that interact. It has lessons. It has themes."
Yeah.
And then he pointed at another book, a science fiction book, I think a culture novel.
Yeah.
By, who's the author of the culture novel? Anyway, it doesn't matter. He pointed at a culture novel. He said, "This book has all those things as well, and it also has robots."
Right.
Although he didn't say robots. He said ideas.
Right.
So I often like to tell that story to sum up why I like genre fiction so much. I like characters. I like characterization. I like all that kind of stuff. I just also enjoy the kinds of stories that you can only tell and the kinds of insights you can only have about the human condition when you have these premises that only exist in science fiction.
Well, I would say those premises only illuminate... There are certain themes that, like, if you want to talk about evolution or something like that, you're only really going to get those themes in a science fiction novel. Whereas all the themes which are in this movie, in this manga, which are important themes, you don't need...
No.
You don't need the robots.
You don't.
Although robots could... I mean, people tried to tell the story with robots over and over and over again. Yeah. For sure.
Suzu could have been a robot.
For sure.
She could have been
apparently Air Doll by Koreeda is apparently about a robot, and I'm guessing it's the same kind of thing.
I wonder what kind of story we're going to get with his next film. Now, I mistook it for...
Oh, yeah, it's a Monster. So you thought it was Monster by Samura? No, it's not Samura. Anyway, there's a manga called Monster about this, like, kind of killer... Anyway, when you told me... The next movie's called Monster... His next movie coming out in a couple months, and you were like, "Hey, did you know he's got this thing coming out based on Monster?" And I flipped my lid.
Yes, you absolutely did, because this is like a perfect storm for you. Your favorite director.
Yes, but
adapting
I was like, my first reaction was, "Whoa," because the material does not seem like I could see him reading the first chapter of Umimachi Daier and going, this is what I could make a movie of this. I couldn't see him reading Monster and wanting to make a movie of it.
Right, and you were right, of course. I just happened to see that...
It was the same title.
Well, what did I say in the message? When you're a podcasting hammer, everything looks like an adaptation nail.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, should we do it? How do we go for time? Should we do it?
Yeah, let's do the evaluations.
So, comic, Kumar, yay or nay?
I'm going to say yay, but with the caveat that hopefully one day there's an official English release of all 9. But if you're really super keen, you can read it online. It's decent, but and I'm going to say yes because it's a good comic. It's won a lot of awards, but I'm going to say don't worry yourself trying to chase it.
Right. I also say yay. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. We do a movie next. Is that right?
Movie yay or nay, Kumar? Obviously, it's a yay.
It's a yay for me. Yeah.
All right. Now I'm going to be contrary, and I am also. I'm going to say.
You better say nay. You better not change your...
I'm not changing anything.
Okay.
All right, I will say nay.
Okay.
But my caveat will be, I encourage everyone listening to go and watch it.
Okay.
And make up your own mind, because I think if I'd been in a slightly different state of mind, if I'd not read the comic first, if I'd been prepared, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. I think the mindset is important here.
So I'm going to say, yeah, absolutely. And also, if you didn't like this one because it didn't have any plot, so the other ones I've seen there's one called Nobody Knows, about these little kids that get abandoned by their parents. They just end up living in this apartment by themselves. That's is based on a true story, apparently. That's quite dramatic in the inciting incident of them being left to fend for themselves and how they survive in this apartment. And there's another one called Like Father, Like Son, in which these two couples, one who's very well-to-do and one who's quite poor, and the dad is actually the guy that runs a cafe in this movie. They find out that their sons were switched to the hospital at birth. Right. And the whole movie's kind of about untangling this, or when he switched the kids back. They're like 6 years old or something now, or older. So this whole big thing. The other one I've watched is, those both spectacular movies, is called Still Walking, which I also think is awesome, but it's like this. So there's like this thing where there are these two sons, and I think the older son or the younger son died drowning while trying to save somebody many years earlier, and there's kind of like these brave resentments about that, but nothing happens in this movie for 2 hours, and I thought it was absolutely great. So if you want a bit more incident, maybe look at Nobody Knows or Like Father, Like Son. But again, there's a lot of relying on the actors to convey with the point of the scene in all those movies.
Absolutely fine with all that kind of thing.
All right.
I hope you don't think I'm some kind of Philistine that unless it...
No, I don't... No, but I predicted a negative reaction.
Oh, God.
I did, based on Ghost World and Tamara Drew and some others.
Tamara Drew was a shock. Okay, but perhaps you know me better than I know myself. But so of course, this vote is nay for me.
Okay, so adaptation.
Yay! I think it's a very, very good adaptation.
Yeah, I think it's really great.
I think it captures. I mean, the comic is the complaints I have about the film are present. I won't say complaints. The things that I said about the film that I attached to my quote-unquote boredom are things that are all present in the comic. You know, it doesn't really have... It's vignettes, it's little stories, and there's never a crisis, you know? There's never a terrible situation that's going to... The police are never there.
No,
society's never passing judgment on what's occurring.
I would say that the unstated crisis is, does Suzu belong in this family?
Right.
I think that is it's not said out loud. Well, it's kind of said out loud. Suzu says she feels like wherever she goes, she's hurting people.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a theme. Can this combine
I would say
family?
it's beyond a theme. I think it is the point of the movie is, can Suzu live with these other women and their mother and their great aunt and all that stuff? And I think when they measure her, and then at the end of the final scene of the movie, they walk down the beach and Sachi says, thanks to our loser dad for giving us this great sister. The end.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the resolution of the quote-unquote crisis of the movie, is how I would read it. But yes, I think it's an excellent adaptation.
I don't think
complain about. I think there's a lot of like the way she meets them at the train station is like better in the movie than in the comics. Like a lot of things, and also you really get it's the advantage of the
takes away
shot so well.
It takes off what's not necessary.
Yeah.
And puts in so much that only film can deliver. And that couldn't be present in the comic.
Yeah.
It's really a good adaptation.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
All right, what have we got next week?
Next week we are doing Skippy from 1931.
This is our earliest one yet, isn't it?
Yeah, so far. It's not, there are a couple things earlier, but it's the earliest one that's like feature length, and we'll talk about that a bit next week.
Oh, I can't wait.
And it was, I just looked it up, it's actually starring Jackie Cooper as a child actor. And I don't know what else there's to say about it. You might be able to, I found some comics online, you can probably find them if you really care. The whole movie's on YouTube, I believe. And the most famous thing about it is the peanut butter brand, which now exists in North America, and there's all sorts of like lawsuits and stuff about that or something.
Oh, no kidding.
There's some sort of drama about that involving the license of the comic for the name of the peanut butter. But we're not reviewing the peanut butter, we'll be reviewing the movie. And we're doing that because the week after we'll be doing something super, super duper new, but we'll talk about that when we get to it.
Great.